Shalom, my dear friends. Shalom from the holy city of Jerusalem. Today, the 14th day of the month of SHVAT of this year of redemption, this year of 5783, corresponding to the 5th of February of the year 2023. And today we are on the eve of this very special day in the Torah calendar, Tu B'Shvat. Tu, the Hebrew letters Tet and Vav, with the mathematical values of 9 and 6 adding up to 15. And this is how we express the number 15 using Hebrew letters, because we do not want to use the two names of the two letters from the holy name, Yud and Hey, which are respectively 10 and 5, since they are letters of the holy name and we do not wish to abuse them, so we use 9 and 6, 15, Tu B'Shvat, the 15th B'Shvat in the month of Shvat. And this day is distinguished with a reference in the Babylonian Talmud in the tractate of Rosh Hashanah, the tractate that deals with what we call the New Year, but the actual Hebrew term Rosh Hashanah means the head of the year. And in the vocabulary of the Torah, the year has 4 heads, and this is not some kind of a monster. We know that there are different parts of the year, the summer, the winter, the spring and the summer, and they all have their own significant root days. And we're all familiar with the most famous Rosh Hashanah, that which takes place in the month of Tishrei, in the month of September, which is the head of the liturgical year. It's the head of the year of Teshuvah, of repentance. We start with a great burst of Teshuvah on the New Year, Rosh Hashanah, and on Yom Kippur, 10 days later. But the year has 3 other heads which are necessary for different purposes. The head of what we would call the political year is on the first day of the month of Nisan. I call it the political year. In Hebrew it will be the Shana of the Melachim, of the kings or the powers, because the for enumerating the reigns of kings, we start on Rosh Chodesh Nisan, and of course we date back this new year, this Rosh, this head of all the months, the first of the count of the 12 months, to the Exodus from Egypt. But we need 2 other heads of the year for other purposes. These are both agricultural purposes. The head of the year of the animals is, according to the main opinion in the Talmud, occurs also on the main Rosh Hashanah. We need to know which is the new year of animals, because we need to distinguish between the animals born in any one year as opposed to those born in any other, because the farmer who's raising these animals will be required to take Meiser Behemo, the tithe of the animal, and therefore he needs to know what is the dividing point between one year and another for the purpose of determining which year new offspring of the cows and the sheep are to be tithed together. Well, now, among the other agricultural heads of the year are the head of the year for ground produce. We also need to know which is the head of the year for produce that comes from 1 year out of the 7-year sabbatical cycle, as opposed to produce that comes from another year. And here the dividing point is on Rosh Hashanah, on the new year of starting in Tishrei. That is the most famous of the 4 heads of the year. Thus, for example, if a ground crop, wheat or barley, was coming to maturity on the eve of Rosh Hashanah, and somebody harvested that crop on the eve of Rosh Hashanah, the tithes would have to be taken from that wheat or barley crop with wheat or barley from the previous year, the year ending on the eve of Rosh Hashanah. Now, if the person were to harvest the grain just a couple of days later after Rosh Hashanah, he may no longer tithe what he harvests after Rosh Hashanah together with the crops that were harvested before Rosh Hashanah. That is in the case of ground crops, wheat, barley, and other such crops. When it comes to trees, we have a different head of the year, and that is the head of the year that we stand on the eve of right now, on the 14th of the month of SHVAT, on the eve of Tu b'Shvat, the 15th of SHVAT. And in the Talmud tractate Rosh Hashanah, Babylonian Talmud, we have the discussion between the houses of Shammai and Hillel. Bet Shammai hold that the Rosh Hashanah, the new year of the fruits of the tree, is on the first day of the month of SHVAT, whereas the house of Hillel hold that the new year for the fruits of the trees is on the 15th of SHVAT. Well, let's consider what this discussion is all about and why it should make a difference when in the year is the new year of the trees. The reason is because the land of Israel is blessed by God with rains. Rains, as we learn in the second paragraph of our Shema prayer, rains that are dependent upon our standards of behavior, in accordance to which God will either send blessing or greater blessing according to our deeds. And the cycle of Eretz Israel is not like Egypt, which is irrigated by the river Nile, and not like other countries that are irrigated or not by natural canals and water systems, but Eretz Israel is entirely dependent upon the rains coming down from the heavens, and they have their seasons. And the normal season of the rains is shortly after the festival of Sukkot, lasting all the way to the month of Nisan, and even after Pesach, towards the end of the month of Nisan. If there are rains, this is all well and good. The main rainy season of Israel hopefully starts within a couple of weeks after Sukkot and goes all the way through the heart of winter, through the spring, and all the way up to Pesach, a little before or afterwards. And rains at any other time of the year are rather unusual. And from time to time there may be a freak shower in the summer, but very, very rare. And by the month of SHVAT, whether according to the opinion of Bet Shammai or according to the opinion of Bet Hillel, by the month of SHVAT, several months after the beginning of the rains, Mar Cheshvan, Kislev, Tevet, by the time we get to SHVAT, according to the theory, most of the rains of that year should have fallen in the land of Israel. Now, in the context of the wider debate around the world between those who claim there are changes in our climates and those who are rather skeptical about this, I would say that in the 40 years that I have lived in Israel, I have noticed a trend that snow in the winter in Yerushalayim has become rather rarer and for shorter periods. I do recall some 20 years ago that snow lay on the ground in Yerushalayim for about 10 to 12 days in a little back alleyway where I am, where cars do not pass. And this is an indication of the relative greatness of the snow in Yerushalayim that year, 20 years ago. Well, until now, this year, there's been, to my knowledge, no snow in Yerushalayim. There's been snow in the north of the country, certainly on Mount Hermon, the Hermon, and probably in some other northern parts of the country. And there may well be snow to come. In the north, there are days when nothing like heavy snow in America, United States, Canada, Russia, and so on. But nevertheless, sometimes 2, 3, 4, 5 days of snow and ice and other conditions. But as everything in the case of the Holy Land of Israel, God's compassion always is such that we never have two very great extremes. However, according to these two opinions of Bet Shammai and Bet Hillel, the majority of the rains are said to have fallen in Israel by either, according to Bet Hillel, the first of SHVAT, or according to Bet Shammai, the first of SHVAT, and according to Bet Hillel, the later date, 15th of SHVAT, which is what we are on the eve of right now. Well, I think the actual precise understanding of that dispute in the Talmud is probably certainly beyond me, how they work all of this out. And indeed, the dates would fluctuate according to the solar calendar, because the Torah calendar is a lunar calendar. And for that reason, the month of SHVAT does shift a little back and forth in the solar year, according to our cycles of leap years, in order to synchronize the solar and the lunar calendar. There are some people who claim that altogether our calendar today has been manipulated, and that there should be really everything should be delayed by a month. We should really right now be at the beginning of the month of Tevet, and we still have a lot more rains hopefully to come in Israel in the rainy season. Even though it's already mid-SHVAT according to our present calendar, we have had several years where many rains fell after the middle of SHVAT, right the way all the way up to Pesach. And I'm confident that the Ribono Shel Olam, the Master of the world, is lovingly and providentially watching over the land of Israel. And my purpose today is not to discuss so much the date of Tu B'Shvat as the significance of this holiday. Well, now many people refer to Tu B'Shvat as Chag HaIlanot, the Chag, the festival of the Ilanot, of the trees. And with due respect to minhag and people's custom and their familiarity, the expression is actually not really accurate. First of all, Tu B'Shvat is not a Chag. Yes, it is definitely a holiday. It is mentioned in the Shulchan Aruch as one of the days that we do not, in the synagogue, recite extra supplications after our Shmona Esrei, our Amidah prayer in the morning and the afternoon. We do not recite Tahanun, as in common with other days that have a level of spiritual elevation. And Shulchan Aruch mentions that it is the custom for people to collect many different kinds of fruits and make many blessings over the fruits. So that is why I actually called the name of today's class the Festival of the Fruits, even though people call it Chag HaIlanot, and the term Chag is not appropriate because the term Chag in the Torah refers specifically to the three pilgrim festivals, the three festivals on which pilgrims would come from all of the habitations of Israel to Jerusalem for Pesach, Passover, for Shavuot, Pentecost, the Festival of Weeks, and for Sukkot, Tabernacles. So these are a cycle, and the word Chag in Hebrew has this connotation of a cycle, a dance cycle, a dance circle uses this root word, and also a compass has the word mahog, which is the needle of the compass, and the whole idea of the Chag is the cycle of the year. But the Talmud, which I refer to, the tractate of Rosh Hashanah, refers to Tu B'Shvat as one of the Rashei Hashanah, the heads of the year. And it is, as we mentioned earlier, the head of the year because we need to know from which year is any particular fruit considered to come from, so that we know how to tithe that fruit and offer the tithes to the priests and the Levites. With all of our crops, ground crops and tree crops, the Torah requires that we separate Truma and Maaser. Truma is the first tithe, which is offered to the Kohen priest and may only be eaten by the Kohen priest, and only when he is in a state of ritual purity. So the Truma portion of the crop is 2%. After the truma has been separated for the kohen, the next tithe is literally a tenth. That is what the word tithe actually originally means, a tenth. And a tenth of what remains after the truma is now separated as the maaser, the tithe of the Levite who has the reward for his services in the temple, singing, guarding the gates, and teaching the people Torah, received the produce of the second tithe, of the Meiser of the Levite, which is less demanding than the Truma of the Kohen priest, because the Levite is not required to eat the Maaser of the Levite in a state of ritual purity. So he's more flexible, and this is his livelihood of the Levite, his Maaser. After the separation of the Maaser of the Levite, which is the first tithe, we then have to separate a second tithe, and in the 7-year sabbatical cycle, there are different things to which this second tithe is devoted. In the first and second years of the cycle, the second tithe, has to be brought up by the farmer or by the gardener, by the family up to Jerusalem, and eaten in Jerusalem in a state of ritual purity. Thus, the Torah provided people coming to Jerusalem for the pilgrim festivals with bringing up their food to eat with them, or they could redeem the actual produce with money and bring the money up to Jerusalem so they would not have to carry the weight of the produce, and purchase in Jerusalem the foods that they would be eating in Jerusalem during their stay for the festival. So that would be in the first and second and the fourth and fifth years of the sabbatical cycle of 7 years. But in the fourth and in the third and the sixth year of the cycle, the second tithe would be given to the poor. And instead of being called Meiser Sheni, the second tithe, in these years number 3 and 6 of the cycle, this will be called Meiser Oni, the tithe of the poor, and given to poor people. And the 7th year of the cycle is the sabbatical cycle, and in the 7th year, which was last year according to our present calendar, during the 7th year, the sabbatical year, everybody is free to go into the fields and orchards and pick their own fruits to take home, and without, of course, trampling on or spoiling the field. So the term used in the Talmud for Tu B'Shvat is Rosh Hashanah La'ilan. We need to know when any given fruit was sufficiently formed on the tree that we are able to say that if we pick this fruit, it is edible and would therefore be liable to separate tithes from it. The Truma and the Maaser of the Levite and the Maaser of the poor, or to take up to Jerusalem in the respective years. We need to know which year, and Tu B'Shvat, the 15th of SHVAT, in accordance with the opinion of Bet Hillel, according to whom we in most cases rule, we say that the dividing line between one year and another for the tithing of fruits is Tu B'Shvat. So now this, according to Pshat, according to the simple and literal meaning of our Torah. But as in everything, it all goes very much deeper. Among the specific practices of today, of Tu B'Shvat, tonight, Sunday night, and Monday, is to gather as many different fruits as possible and to recite blessings over the fruits. In the land of Israel, the 7 most famous of the fruits, which are mentioned specifically in Deuteronomy, are the wheat and the barley, the vine and the olive tree, the dates and the figs and the pomegranates. Each one of them a tremendously amazing fruit. Each one of them with its own unique properties, healing properties, nutritional properties, and all kinds of other properties. And the main laws of tithing would apply to wine and olive oil, and to products using grains, wheat and barley, and people who eat the fruits, the pomegranates, the figs, and the dates. And in addition to these 7 fruits, it is also, according to the halakha, mandatory to separate tithes from all of the other fruits of the trees and the crops of the ground. So that according to the halakha. And this is an integral part of kashrut, because the reason why we separate tithes from our foods, the farmers normally today, when you buy a product in the supermarket or some other outlet where you have kosher products, and you buy a product that has a rabbinical certification on it that is kosher, that means that the producers themselves will have separated the necessary tithes of all the different ingredients that go into that product. And that way, many members of the public, unfortunately, have very little idea of the whole idea of tithing of agricultural produce, which applies even to people who have a tree in their garden, or even if they have something growing in a little pot in their yard or in their home, it could well be liable to tithing if it's in the land of Israel. Tithing is not applicable outside of the land of Israel. However, just as we need to make sure that our foods are kosher from the point of view of not having unkosher ingredients which spoil the soul, which sully and darken our intellect. The same is certainly true with fruits of the land of Israel. If they have not had the necessary tithes separated, they are likely to damage the minds and the souls of the person who are eating them. Well, here in Israel, in Jerusalem, and across the country where there are people who are Torah observant, in all of the greengrocers, all of the fruit shops, there will always be a notice indicating that the fruits on sale either have been tithed already or may not be sold because they have not yet been tithed. And every day to the fruit stores, when new produce is delivered, there will arrive a representative of the Bet Din, of the rabbinical certifying organization, who will themselves physically separate the tithes from the tomatoes, the cucumbers, the apples, the oranges, the bananas, and all of the other fruits, and they will dispose of them in a way that nobody can eat them, because in our time, unfortunately, nobody is fit to eat this up to 10% of the produce. However, when we do this, when we separate off this 10%, well, 2% for the Kohen and 10% for the Levite, when we do this today, it's not a waste, because thereby we are elevating all of the other 9/10 of the food for our ingestion and consumption. Just think for a moment of the horrendous waste that goes on throughout so much of the Western world of foods when people in other parts of the world are starving. The tremendous waste, the tremendous cruelty involved in production of so many products. When we are seeking to have foods that are certified kosher, we are at least saving ourselves from some of those troubles, although unfortunately not all of them. We cannot say that just because a product has a kosher certification that is therefore healthy to eat it. In fact, some of the worst demons of what is available in the food stores have beautiful kosher certification, but may be most damaging to our health and that of our young and tender children, who do not need this abundance of sugar and color additives and taste additives and heaven knows what other additives. I now understand that certain figures are very influential in the ownership of agricultural land are trying to introduce strains that have actually been genetically modified to do the same things that the COVID vaccine is said to have been intended to do. And one wants to be very, very careful about what one is ingesting into one's system. So the separation of tithes, which is one of the themes that people do think about on Tu B'Shvat, is a very important thing. This is what ensures the kashrut of our products. And certainly if you are buying fruits that are labeled as having their origin in Israel, you would want to make sure that if it's not certified that tithes have been separated, that you separate just a little and dispose of it in an honorable way. You could wrap it up and put it out into the yard, but this way you are ensuring the kashrut of your products. Well, now I'd like to turn to the spiritual kashrut of what you take into yourself. And here is one of the most important aspects of this holiday, this time for rejoicing of Tu B'Shvat, that we seek to arrange a table for those who have the ability, as many fruits as you can gather together. Now, this is not the all-important thing. You are not a failure if you only had 3 different kinds of fruits. If you'd have an apple, an orange, and some almonds, you can make a beautiful Tu B'Shvat, because the most important aspect of the whole celebration is to make the blessings with the proper intent. And this is what distinguishes us from animals. We, the children of Israel, and all who are walking with us, are distinct from all of the peoples of the earth, because before we ingest food, before we take food into our mouth, we pause. We pause to remind ourselves that this food is given to us by the creator of the world, that this food has divine sparks, divine energy in it, that when we ingest it into our divinely created bodies, our marvelous bodies, our infinitely wonderful bodies, our bodies have the way to break down the item and draw not only the physical nutrients, but also the spiritual nutrients that are in this food. And the difference between Ben Adam, between Bnei Adam, the children of Adam, that is the sons and daughters of Israel, and Behemoth, animals, is that the Israelite, before just popping the food into the mouth, pauses for a moment of reflection and brings forth from the mouth that formula of blessing that will invest this item of food with spiritual strength and power to give us vitality. You know, God feeds the creation micro moment by micro moment all the time. And parnasa, livelihood, is not just your paycheck or your dividends. Parnasa is moment to moment, micro moment to micro moment, what is coming through the mind, the soul, the thoughts, the feelings, intuitions, everything. It's all parnasa, and it's all coming from the burning on the altar of the digestive system with the liver. It's all this sorting out of the energies. It's a spiritual process that is facilitated in its true spiritual power by the blessing. Baruch, blessed, Atah, thou, Adonai, my Lord, my Master, my God, the ruler, the power of my life. Eloheinu, our God, our Judge, the source of everything. Melech HaOlam, the King of all of everything, the King of the universe, the King of the entire creation. Borei Peri Ha'etz, who creates the fruit of the tree. And so with each of the other kinds of foods, be it the fruit of the land, Borei Peri Ha'adama, if it grows in the ground, a vegetable, as opposed to on a tree, Ha'etz, or if it's a kind of food that comes under the general category where the concluding words of the blessing are Shehakol Nehye B'Devaro. After that same introduction, the same formula of every blessing, blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe. Shehakol Nehye B'Devaro. That third type of blessing, that everything comes about through His word, through the creative word of Maaseh Bereshit, the work of creation. Or if it's bread, Hamotzi lechem min haaretz. He brings forth the bread from the land. If it's wine, borei peri hagefen. Blessed, he creates the fruit of the vine. The difference between one who eats without the blessing and one who eats the blessing is that the food has been elevated. Not only will the food give physical energy, physical nutrition, but now the holy sparks in the food have been released through the formula of the blessing to work on that person, and all the vibrations are bringing further blessing into the world. And this is why it is customary on Tu B'Shvat to focus on the blessings and the various halachot, the rules surrounding our blessings, a very, very beautiful system of holy etiquette, where we learn how to live our lives in the presence of the King of the universe, because we constantly, over every step we take, over every kind of food, at every meal, we say our blessings. In the morning, we wake up and we say our blessings of thanksgiving for our vision, for our ability to stand up straight, to walk, and all of the other blessings. Each time we make a blessing, Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech HaOlam, we are manifesting God in our world. So Tu B'Shvat, the beautiful ritual of spreading the table with a variety of fruits and other dainties, with some cakes and cookies, with if you have some bread, some fresh baked bread, some wine if you can, and saying many blessings. There is a whole order which the Kabbalists have developed for saying these various blessings. We do not say a separate blessing over every separate piece of fruit that we eat. We only say one blessing over all the wine we're going to drink at this observance, one blessing over all the bread we shall eat, and the fruits we eat on Tu B'Shvat are not included in the blessing over the bread, but we only make one blessing over fruits of the tree, borei peri ha'etz, and one blessing over the fruits of the ground, borei peri ha'adama. But the important thing is, when eating the fruits, as you chew the fruit and wonder over the beautiful flavors that God has created, to remember in your mind, to wonder how all of this comes from the creative power of God. As you sip your wine, if you have the wine or anything else you're eating, as you chew, remember that your 32 teeth, your 32 pathways of wisdom are breaking up this item so that it will be able to be incorporated into your body and into your soul to give you fresh, spiritual, fresh, holy energy. There's a whole discipline of holy eating, which is what we are practicing on Tu B'Shvat. But there's more to it also, because this hidden holiday of the Torah calendar is parallel to another hidden holiday, which is exactly 6 months later, because the Torah calendar is divided into two arms, the arms of the summer months and the arms of the winter months. The winter months beginning from Tishrei have now the month of SHVAT, with this very special day, the 15th of SHVAT, and the months of the summer beginning with Nisan have the 5th month of Av, Menachem Av, which after the tragedy of Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, we have Tu B'Av, the 15th of Av, which is one of the hidden holidays alluded to in the very closing chapter of the book of Judges, a day of reconciliation between the tribes of Israel and the tribe of Benjamin after the disaster of the Pilegesh Begiv'ah, the consort of Giv'ah, which caused a war between the tribes and the tribe of Benjamin. So the 15th of Av is the day of reconciliation and a day of very great elevation, and so too Tu B'Shvat. I call it the festival of the fruits this time. The Mishnah and the Talmud call it Rosh Hashanah Ha'ilan, of the tree. There are two words in the Holy Tongue used for the word tree generally as generic terms. the word etz, which is the word used for the tree of knowledge of good and evil in Genesis, and the tree of life. And the word ilan, which is the word used in the Mishnah in Tractate Rosh Hashanah, the Rosh Hashanah, Ha'ilan, the new year of the Ilan. Well, the Ilan does not simply mean one single oak tree or beech tree or other kind of tree. The Ilan, it's very significant that the Mishnah, the Talmud, do not call it Rosh Hashanah Shel Ha'ilanot. And that is why it is inaccurate to call it Chag Ha'ilanot. It's not a Chag, as I said earlier. It's not one of the three festivals mentioned in the Torah. And it's not of the Ilanot, the trees, but specifically of the Ilan, referring to the archetypal tree of life. This was alluded to in the portion we had yesterday in Beshalach. After the account of the crossing of the Red Sea, we have the account of how the children of Israel advanced 3 days into the wilderness, and they came to Marah, where the waters were bitter, and there it was that God showed Moses the tree. He taught him a tree, that is the meaning of the text in the Hebrew, Vayorehu etz. He taught him a tree, and it was this tree that sweetened the waters. And on the hidden level, this tree refers to the Torah, which sweetens all of the bitterness of our lives in this world. When we have the higher wisdom of the Torah, the deeper understanding, then although not all hurt can simply be magically erased, through the power of understanding, we can begin to recognize how everything is actually only out of God's kindness and compassion for us. So the tree, the Ilan, is actually the source of all of the souls in creation. And just like an earthly tree, which develops from being a sapling which itself either was planted by a human or actually sprung out of a fruit of a previous tree that fell into the ground and took and begins to grow, little by little the tree grows and grows, and its branches spread, and it spreads its buds, and they will reach out to receive the sunlight, and they will then begin to give the tree energy to produce its fruits according to the genetic information in the seed that brought out that tree. And the amazing thing about the creation is that everything is multiplicity. Like it says in Genesis, the account of creation, God says to the creatures, Peru urevu, be fruitful and multiply. Now God says this to the fish and to the birds of the sky, to the animals, and to Adam and Chava, Adam and Eve. And the very expression Peru, be fruitful, urevu, and multiply, make many, this is a word whose connotation derived from the idea of a tree, where from a single seed, you can have a tree that produces every year hundreds and thousands of fruits, all having exactly the same genetic information, and each one of those could potentially and theoretically produce another a tree bringing thousands and thousands of fruits and more seeds. This is the one of the greatest testimonies to the godly creation which we have been given the merit to stand in, to live in all around us. This wonder that everything increases. Do you have a single machine that increases? Yes, you can copy some text on your computer and paste it in a million places, but it will always be exactly the same text that you paste in a million other places. But God makes every single thing completely unique. Every single fruit, people who buy their etrog for Sukkot, for the four kinds, the etrog and lulav, the hadas and the arava, the citron and the palm branch and the myrtle and the the willow branch, when you go to choose an etrog, you see just how unique every single fruit is. We might not notice it when we're peeling potatoes or preparing apples and tomatoes, but certainly if you examine etrogs, you see the exquisite work of Borei Ha'olam in every single fruit. And you see, the time will come every year, the leaves fall off the tree, the fruits ripen, either they're picked or they'll fall off, birds will take them, and the leaves will all fall off, and they will rot and go back into the earth and be recycled. And that is really so important to understand about Tu B'Shvat, that it's all about this recycling, because we have no idea what are the souls in the fruits that we are eating. We have no idea about the sparks that are in the fruits. Rabbi Nachman teaches in Likutei Moharan that it is forbidden to eat an unripe fruit, because that fruit, if you ingest it, will actually suck your energy from you. There are all kinds of spirits and souls within each fruit that are craving for their tikkun. And if somebody just idly, unthinkingly bites into the fruit and casts it away without thinking further about it, those souls have no elevation, no ascent. But when we mindfully take our fruit, and before we dig our teeth into it, we meditate and we contemplate and we think about the master of the universe who brought down his divine energy to this particular item, which has come now right to me for the reason in his inscrutable wisdom why he sent this particular plate to me with all of these things that have come all from all over the world, maybe. All kinds of products and fruits, different items, they're all here, all in his inscrutable wisdom that he actually controls the entire thing, all of these trillions and multiple trillions of items in creation that are all being constantly recycled. And we too, we're going to have to be recycled. We are going to come to the end of our life, and our bodies will not be able to live forever. And like leaves that fade and drop off the tree, finally, when the time is ready for our souls to leave our bodies, to drop our bodies, to be disposed of, hopefully by our families and friends in an honorable way, then our bodies also will be returned to the earth and will be recycled and joined again back. We think here we are, no, there's me and the world, but no, we're actually one with the world. And our greatness as souls is when we assert and affirm that unity, that connection with this divinity that is all around us, which is not mindless divinity, but it's divinity with mind. God has a mind, he has a goal, he has a goodness that he wishes to bestow upon us, and he trains us through our relationship with our most vital source of life, our food. And part of the reason why there is so little evident blessing in the world we live in today, why people are so negative about their livelihood and about what's on their table and about what's in their stores, complaining about the shortages, is that we have been arrogant. We have not appreciated, we've not given thanks to the good that we have enjoyed. We have been wasteful, we've been abusive of our foods, we have been spoken sometimes about our foods in very negative ways, and we need to draw out of this holy observance of Tu B'Shvat. We need to draw out of it a heightened awareness of our relationship with our food as God's gift to us, as God's training to us to walk in his ways, in the higher etiquette of the children of God. Because that is what the halacha is. We've seen over the past few years how a very free and easy American actress was captivated by the British royal family, and particularly by one prince of the royal family, and succeeded in catching him. And she was brought into a family, the royal family of Britain, that everybody knows live according to a very strict set of rules and of etiquette, which limit all kinds of things that commoners are allowed to do without worrying, because they are not under the scrutiny of the public 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. But those in the royal family are expected to publicly behave in a way that is consonant with their role as leaders and exemplars. Well, now, that's the theory. And we won't go into the whole history here, but this American actress simply found the set of rules just too heavy for her, which I could understand. She did not apparently realize what she was getting herself into, and she was able to draw out her family, her husband, who in any case was, as he calls himself, the spare, so in any case is quite unlikely ever to be required to serve as king of Britain. She drew him out, and he now also rejects entirely this system of etiquette with which he was brought up. Well, now, Torah etiquette is entirely different because it's not for show. In the British royal family and many other cultures, etiquette is primarily for show. Louis XIV had a most phenomenal system of etiquette which was all designed to show his glory and expand his ego. But we, the chosen people, the people of Israel, are the ambassadors of the Supreme, the All-High, God Almighty. And our task for ourselves and those around us, and particularly for our children and our students, is to teach, to show the way of God. And the real fruits of the tree are not the apples and oranges just that we're eating, but the real fruits of the tree are our children and our students. And those are the most precious fruits of the tree of life. Because at a time when in the public forum the discussion is all about population and certain people who are rising up feeling there's a need to curtail the human population and to reduce the human population for fear that somehow the resources might run out or be compromised and the people's lives would become unsustainable. And it may be that without question you cannot govern a world with billions and billions of people using a political system that was relevant in Athens 2,500 years ago, with a population of just a few hundred freemen having their discussions in the marketplace. To run a world with the complexity of our world, with the way that we are using its resources and the needs of industry and transport and all the other needs of the world, does need clearly some kind of a super organization which is devoted not to furthering the interests of a select few, but actually to the benefit of the whole. Well, now, I don't want to get now into the subject of world government. What I do want to say is that a most important aspect of Tu B'Shvat, the day on which we mark the fruits, we need to pay attention to the fruits of our families, the fruits of our trees, as the psalm says that your children should be like olive trees around your table, that your wife should be like a fertile vine. Our wives, our children, our husbands, our sons, our daughters, our grandsons, granddaughters, our brothers and sisters, students of all kinds, ages and levels, each and every one is a precious fruit of the tree. We ourselves are our fruit. We have our lifetime. After that, we have to give over the torch to others. We have to be aware of our mortality, and that's precisely why we need to learn the art of teaching and bringing people to God through the power of example, through the shining light that will come from those who do observe the Torah with absolutely wholeheartedness. And when we devote ourselves to the path of devekut, of devotion, through careful attention to our prayers and our blessings. And you do not need to be acquainted with the whole Hebrew language to do this. It states in the Midrash of Elijah the prophet, Tana Devei Eliyahu, at the beginning of the section that speaks about the prophetess Devorah, chapter 9, speaks about how Holy Spirit is open to everybody, Jew or Gentile, man or woman, free man or slave. It all depends upon the effort. Devotions do not require that you can understand the whole Bible in Hebrew and the whole Siddur in Hebrew, but that you give your heart to God. And what we need to be aware of this Tu B'Shvat is the preciousness of those around us whom we are called upon to influence and to teach the ways of Torah. And this is called the very first mitzvah of the Torah. God says to Adam and Eve, Pru urevu. As he had said to the animals, he had said to the fish, Pru urevu. Be fruitful and multiple. Make peri, make fruit. At a time when many people are only intent on destroying fetuses, destroying embryos, at a time when many are intent on kidnapping little children and on other crimes with little children, the whole intent of Israel must be to foster and to nurture the souls of the young, the tender souls, in the direction of love of God, at a time when the instruments of mind control, of television and radio, of internet, and all the other instruments which are coming right into our telephones, into our homes, and want more than anything to capture the minds of our children. We need to nurture these precious fruits of the tree. If the British royal families speak about breeding, we see how horribly wrong that has gone. And we, the children of Israel, and all who go with us, cannot afford to go wrong. Chinuch, education of our children and children of all ages, because people now are waking up across the world to the Torah. The mass media entirely miss this. Nobody reports on this. Nobody's interested in this. But the phenomena is, which I can see through emails and messages I receive and many others are receiving, we know that throughout the world there's arousal to the Torah. And we need ourselves, those who are already there, as the Lubavitcher Rebbe of blessed memory would say, if you know Aleph and your friend doesn't, then teach him Aleph, teach her Aleph. If you know Aleph Bet and your friend only knows Aleph, then teach him or her Bet as well. And each one of us needs to spread this light. This is how we cultivate and nurture the holy Ilan, the holy tree of the soul, the tree of life. We nurture by pouring the nourishing waters of the Torah and the fertilizer of the mitzvot, all making the fruits grow to a state of holiness and purity. So let's keep these themes in mind, this Tu B'Shvat, which is tonight, the night of February the 5th, Sunday night, February the 5th, and Monday, February the 6th. And let us also keep these lessons in our minds as we go from Tu B'Shvat afterwards through into the days of the year. The message of not just picking up a piece of fruit from the table, from the plate, from wherever, and sticking it absent-mindedly into our mouths and chewing, but rather when we pick it up, we have a moment to reflect on the wonders of creation that are right in this item here. How much went into this? How much went in as the cells of the fruit multiplied, divided one after the other, as it grew on the tree, out of the bud, out of the flower, from the twig? How much the sunlight, the water, the processes, and so it is with all of the other things. If it's a meat product or a poultry product, the animal there, what is with which soul was in that piece of beef or that piece of chicken you might be eating, or this fish? And when we pause before eating, we are allowing this spirituality to come up. When we, out of our mouth, offer the words of our prayers, like the sweet savor coming off the altar of our organism, just through those moments of devotion, because we, through the blessing, are the priest. And when we begin to chew the food, we are, as it were, slaughtering the sacrifice. And as we chew and swallow, the food is being burned on the altar of God, and the energies which we receive from the food are offered to God in our service. And then, after the theme of the blessings and our pause before we take the food into our mouth, the other most important theme of this Tu B'Shvat, the education of our precious children, the education of our precious students, that we all now need to pull together. That is what it's about now. At a time when the world is all with these centrifugal forces, we need to be the force that draws together to make connections, as it says in the closing words of the prophet Malachi. Then one will speak to another. This dialogue between fellow travelers, between like-minded people, this quiet dialogue that is not reported in the media, it's not written in anybody's book except the book of God Almighty. God hears. God hears your study sessions with your study partner over Zoom, over the phone, your friend in the community, the person you've gone to give some encouragement, some kind words. God hears all of this, and it's all recorded in his book. And it's this that brings about the final revelation which will come, and we'll be ready, prepared for it, God willing. My dear friends, this Rosh Hashanah, this head of the year of the Ilan on the tree, I wish you now Shana Tova in that respect, a year of Hitchadshut, of renewal, of joy, of delight in the godliness that is all around us. Shavuot Tov Vorach, a good and a blessed week, and Shana Tova, a good and a blessed year.